relating to the Negotiable Instrument Act 1886, whereby under section 118 legal presumptions are being prescribed by 1, 2, 3, 4 series, whereby it says one of the presumption is all negotiable instruments are written for consideration. So if in any civil suit, if bill of exchange is the issue involved in the claim, and if that is the ground challenged, then if one of the party to the claim proves that bill of exchange is valid, automatically consideration is also being proved, because it is the legal presumptions. So all presumptions, if they are covered in plain or written statement, they are with connection in accordance with the first fundamental rule of Order 6. The third exception to the first fundamental rule is customs and usage of trade. If any party to the claim seeks the custom or usage as the defense or as the fact to be used to get the claim amount, then the party must first state that this is the custom of a trade, of a mercantile world, and it is being followed by immemorable time, by with all the succession is there, then that custom is the proved or legal custom. If these kind of customs are involved in plain or written statement, though it states the law, but they are exception to the first rule. For the matter of clarity or for the matter of convenience, if anything is been stated in plain, it is the exception to rule 1. Now let us switch on to the second rule of fundamental rule of pleading. The plaint or pleading must state all the material facts. Only facts can be covered by this pleading. What is the meaning of then material fact? It is very well defined by the author that the material fact which is essential to the plaintiff's cause of action or to the defendant's defense, which each must prove or fail. Any fact which are necessary, essential to the plaintiff's cause of action or essential or important for the defendant's defense, then that fact is the material fact. Material facts are those facts without mentioning these facts you cannot put your contention, or one cannot defend the opponent's contention. So material facts are the essence of the suit, and all these material facts, when the case is on the second stage of argument and proving the case of either of the side, these all material facts either been proved or they are failed to prove. So these facts are essence of the civil suit. Dear friend, in the case of Philip versus Philip, whereby it was decided that the immovable property transferred by the will, in that kind of cases, what is the material fact? For that, material fact is prescribed by this case of Philip versus Philip, that in this kind of transfer of immovable property by will, the clause of will which states that this particular immovable property is given to X by the wish of the deceased person. That provision of will is called the material fact. So it must contain only material fact. Other facts are not necessary to be mentioned. Now dear friend, this material fact is also considered as the second essential thing relating to pleading. If material fact is not given, but if that fact is relating to law, then what? The order 6 says that only fact can be covered. This fact must always be in the material fact. Is there any exception to which that material facts are not being covered but some law is being given? Yes dear friend, material facts, the rule of material facts also has some exceptions. These exceptions are condition precedent, presumptions as I have stated earlier, and matters of inducement. First and third are the new points to the exceptions because I have already discussed the presumptions as per Negotiable Instrument Act. Condition precedent, which means as per section 80 of CPC, if any suit is going to be filed before government or government officer, then there must be a notice under section 80 being given to that particular authority, government or government officer. So in plaint or in written statement, instead of explaining material fact, if that notice is being given that this condition precedent to file a suit against government or a government officer, we have served this notice to this particular authority, that notice is about legal aspects. So that legal notice, if is being covered by pleading, is also valid, falls under the material facts. So as per section 80, it is prerequisite condition. So that prerequisite condition is been disclosed in pleading by way of plaint or by written statement, it is valid though it is not a material fact. And the second is presumption, which I have discussed, and the third exception to this second rule is matter of inducement. Matter of inducement means the related matters, which means that the matters which are relating to the original suit, for which some are not so important to be disclosed, but if it is disclosed in plaint or a written statement, due to that facts, material facts becomes more important. These are called the matter of inducement. They are relating to the litigation. So these kind of matters, if they are covered by pleading, they are not material facts, but to support the fact, they are matter of inducement. So these are the three exceptions to the second rule. The third rule of this fundamental rule of pleading is the pleading must state only the facts and not evidence by which they are to be proved. These material facts are considered as facta probanda and not evidence, which means facta probentia. These are the two Latin words. Facta probanda means the material facts, and facta probatia means the evidence. So, pleading must contain the facts and facts only, but it must not contain any evidences. On which base of evidence one is going to prove the contentions can be produced later on in the another stage of suit, but not at this first stage. So this is called the facta probatia and facta probanda. Facta probanda is necessary. Facta probatia is not at all necessary to mention. Rather, if you disclose the facta probatia, it will help the opposite party to make his or her case more powerful. On that basis, one can adversely prove the contentions of the other party. The case law for this particular rule is Bordale versus Hunter. This case was relating to the insurance policy, whereby one of the clause of insurance policy was that policy will become void if the policy holder dies of his own hand. This is the one of the clause of insurance policy. If policy holders dies of his own hand, then the legal heir of the deceased person are not entitled to the insured money. In this particular case, the deceased was found that he purchased a gun from a shop. He also tried to kill himself before the incident committed that day before. He also tried to kill himself, and all these facts were disclosed by his wife. So, in that manner, it is said that it disclosed that the policy holder died by his own hand. In a plaint or a written statement, if it is clearly clarified that the policy holder died of his own hand, it is sufficient. It is not necessary to mention that the gun was purchased by the policy holder, he also attempted. These kind of things are not necessary to be disclosed in the pleading. It is the second stage of pleading, the claim. The next and fourth rule is it must state such facts concisely with precision and certainty. Concisely with precision. These are the three main points for this fourth rule, that all the facts concisely been presented with precisely. So it is not you just narrate all the facts, but no conclusion is arrived. Then this pleading is not a fair pleading. Out of this pleading, one will never know which are the issues, which are the contentions. How you can say that which kind of pleadings are called precise? For that, CPC has given the list, whereby the list includes names of the parties. The second is pronouns should be avoided. Instead of using he, she, his, her, him, his, instead of that one should use the names of the parties. Again, if the names are being used, then afterwards the plaint or written statement must contain the plaintiff or the defendant, not by the name of a person, that X. Every time if X is written, it is not the proper pleading. Then for proper pleading, the defendant or the plaintiff should be written. The next point is things should be called by correct names throughout. For example, as I have discussed the case of life insurance policy. For example, it is the case of life insurance corporation. Once if you write life insurance corporation into bracket, if you write now onwards it is written as LIC, then throughout the pleading you should use LIC. Once you write LIC, then you write life insurance corporation. This is not the proper method of pleading. So things should be called by correct names throughout. Complex sentences should be avoided. The sixth point is description in passive voice should be avoided. Plaintiff has been paid by the defendant. This is called the passive voice. It should be avoided in fair or good pleading. Plaintiff is paid by defendant. It should not be narrated like this. Plaintiff is paid. That is sufficient. Active voice should be followed if it is the precise pleading. The next point of precision is repetition should be avoided. Again and again, if one only fact is being repeated throughout the pleading, it should be avoided. All necessary particulars should be stated. If anything is being left, it will adversely affect the suit. And the last point for precision is language of the document or of the act itself should be used. Dear friend, as in the case of Hunter, that policy holder if dies of his own hand, that particular clause should be written as it is contained in the policy. If it is the arbitration matter, the arbitration clause word to word should be contained in the pleadings. These are the fourth rule of the pleadings. Dear friend, all these are the four fundamental rules for pleadings. I hope I have tried to clear the concept of pleadings from the subject of drafting, pleading and conveyancing. These are the main or the basic information legal provisions as contained in CPC, Civil Procedure Code, that I have tried to make it clear before you. I hope I have successfully discussed